Hello, people. I created this document, which I called Square, in which I talked about why I hate squares. Enjoy, and also enjoy my gameplay of Bloxors, a game of the childhood. Squares. What is up with squares? They are rectangles, and yet rectangles are not them. The only differentiation between squares and rectangles is the length of the sides. Why? Why do we measure the length of a rectangle and say that's even for all four of them? So it's a square. Squares. You can divide a square into two equal triangles, 45, 45, 90 isosceles triangles with base and height of the length of the square. Triangles, not squares. Why create triangles from squares? Squares are not special. They really just vibe there, living carefree of anything else. Squares are a boring shape. Squares. Talk about dodecahedrons. Those are a cool shape. Squares exist in 2 dimensions, but we don't. Humans and literally everything in this world exists in 3 dimensions. So any 2-dimensional shape is immediately bad. In abstract algebra, there is a group on squares regarding the rotations and flips on the square called D4, which means the dihedral rotational group of 4. This subset has 8 elements. E meaning the element, E meaning the identity, H meaning one flip down V meaning another flip, D is a different flip, and D prime is a 4th flip. R90 meaning the rotation of 90 degrees, R180 rotation of 180 degrees, and R270 a rotation of 270 degrees. But this subset is non-abelian, which is not cool. This means that flipping a square and rotating it is not the same as rotating the square the same amount and flipping down the same line. Non-abelian groups are not cool. Squares are nearly impossible to come across naturally. Due to the nature of the sides, the possibility that all 4 sides are exactly the same length, not close to exactly the same length, are close to 0. That being said, why did we create squares? Even further than that, who said that squares should be a commonality in our lives? They are the shape we are least likely to encounter in our normal lives. We should be teaching about triangles and how cool they are. Triangles are so much cooler than squares. All squares are the same if you think about it. They're all isometric, meaning that they exist in the same space, they all have the same general thing, and they all act about the same. They all have 4 sides of equal length, 4 90-degree angles, and their center point is where the diagonals intersect, and it's in the middle. Squares literally suck. There is a reason why people say don't be a square. They mean don't be a stupid person, don't be idiotic to existence, don't be boring for a lack of better terms. Squares are dumb with the B emoji. Why are 90-degree angles called right? They aren't correct, they're just built different. They just exist, just like my boys, the acute and obtuse angles. That being said, why don't we talk about angles that are above 180 degrees outside of trigonometry and the unit circle? And beyond that, why is it not a unit square? If squares are so cool, then why is math based more in triangles and squares? Wake up, people. Squares are canceled on Twitter.com. We can't be supporting them anymore. If you support squares as a shape, you might need your humanity card revoked. Squares are ruining the American society as we know it. The political compass is a square, and that's not very cash money now. Maps are squares, and people think the world is flat because maps are squares. Squares produce idiots. Information given from squares leads people down the treacherous path of stupidity, and I simply cannot allow it. Wyoming is essentially a square state, if it's a state at all, and everyone knows nothing happens there. Squares limit uniqueness. They limit people's potential. Have you ever heard of anything good coming from Wyoming? That's what I thought. Nothing. Cubes are no better. The only thing that makes cubes better than squares is that they're in 3 dimensions, but they're just as bad. They're just a pretentious little square who exists in 3 dimensions. Cubes will go to wine parties with all the other upper middle class people and laugh about poor people. Cubes participate in pyramid schemes because they think it's an actually good idea. Cube parents create square children. Cubes obtain all their wealth from the underground work they have their underlings do. They sit in their Tahoes or Hummers or other pretentious cube cars when they only have 2 children and have nothing with their lives to do. Like I said, they have 2 children. Cube parents will have 2 children to further the idea of cubism and squarism. They need everything in 4s. They can't have 5 children. They cannot have the crusts on their sandwiches. They need it to be squared. The favorite words of them are 4 letters long. Live, laugh, love. They are cringy people. Karens are cubes. Cubes look down on other shapes because they are not perfect. Sociologically, let's go away from that. Mathematically, squares and cubes are the worst. They don't deserve the appreciation they receive. The mathematical community needs to come together to overthrow the square and cube overlords that control so much of our theories. Friends, brothers and sisters, Romans, fellow countrymen, will you promise to be against squares? Will you fulfill your duty as a human being to inform the world of the terrors and harms that the squares produce and cultivate in our world, our society, our homes? Cubes and squares are the evilest form of anything imaginable in this plane of existence. If there was one shape I would get rid of, it would be squares and by proxy cubes. They are simply pretentious rectangles and rectangular prisms.